The information provided on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or legal advice. Always consult with a qualified financial and or legal professionals before making any legal or financial decisions or investments.
I hope at some point to own a WNBA team. I hope to run a WNBA team the way that I would want it to be ran if, I was playing for it.
No Free Lunch is presented by Piro Price. Hey everybody, I'm Ndamukong Suh, and welcome to No Free Lunch. Today I'm talking to Candace Parker about how WNBA players have become resourceful and creative to maximize their earning potential, and why you're seeing so many one-year deals in the WNBA. Let's find out right here on No Free Lunch. She is a two-time national collegiate champion, a WNBA champion, and has a book out now called The Can-Do Mindset: How to Cultivate Resilience Following Your Heart and Fight for Your Passions. Candace Parker, thank you for joining us at No Free Lunch.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
So we, officially first met in Houston while you were doing an amazing interview with a close friend of mine in Ime. But I got an interesting question for you. What did you have to lose before you started winning in life? Because you've done a lot of winning.
I had to lose, that's a great, I know that's a great question. I would say I almost had to lose the fear of failure.
Okay.
To win.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if you relinquish the results, you put the work in, your mind is clear, you're able to succeed. You start worrying about failing and missteps and missed shots and all those things, I think that's when you're at your worst.
Okay. No, I love that because I think that's something as professional athletes where we strive to be perfect all the time. Mm-hmm. And we want to be the best, especially when we really get into our crafts, but not being afraid to have mishaps and go through trials and tribulations, which I've gone through my fair share. Getting through that takes you to another level and opens up and unlocks that 1% that we're always trying to unlock every off season. So did you learn that in college, or did you have to wait till you're a professional to be able to get to that level?
Growing up in my household, I had two older brothers that kind of set the stage, set the bar. And my parents developed our mindset, which I didn't even realize they were doing from the time I can ever remember. I mean, Saturdays and Sundays at the Parkers, you would see my dad roll up in his car. My brothers would be alongside the car running in their strength shoes. We were you did your chores, we ate dinner together, we read and watched the History Channel just as much as we watched sports. So we were very well-rounded, and I think I attribute a lot of that to my parents because they held us accountable. And so when I got to high school, when I got to college, when I got to the pros, I wasn't surprised by any of it because I had already done the hard stuff at home, and pretty soon I couldn't wait to be the one that was running after the car in my strength shoes and, bringing home an A on a test, that type of stuff. So we always held ourselves accountable as a family. And, my parents, I'm so grateful for them setting the tone.
Us as kids don't realize until we're much older how much of influence they have. And yes, we're raised by a village as how I was, but it's ultimately we embody our parents. We just don't want to hear it from them on a consistent basis is usually the problem with most kids. But we're learning that in our own age with our own kids as well. That's
daughter.
Why you got to have that village.
Yes.
So they push them for you. So
definitely do.
Would you say your success as a college player is stemming from those experiences and one of the reasons why you spent all 4 years in college versus having an opportunity, obviously being outside of your injury earlier on in your career, but you had the opportunity to leave before that. How did that mold you in your maturity in building that perspective for yourself also off the court?
Well, women's basketball is a little different. It's not like we leave and it's, rags to riches. Yeah. I think that I'm grateful for Coach Summit because every player that played for her for 4 years got their degree in college. So she has 100% graduation rate. So all of us were not trying to mess that up.
Yeah.
But also the role models that I was able to see do a number of things that I eventually would do or am doing at the moment, to balance career and family and business, to start your next career before your career is over. the transitions, the ups and downs, like the balancing of emotions. So I think all of that is learned at a pretty young age and it's applied at a later age. And so I'm super grateful for my experience at Tennessee. I know it's crazy, like having Coach Summit as a role model. She was one of those people that it wasn't a do as she says, it was a do as she did, because she consistently was living the way that she expected everybody else around her to live.
Yeah. No, it's interesting that you say that finishing school was important to you, and not only to not be amongst all the other people that came before you, but I think it was for me, for something that I prided myself on was, one, I was going to finish school, but I was going to do it in a very difficult degree to most people, being engineer, and one, following after my dad's footsteps from that perspective. And
By the way, degree from Nebraska in engineering. That's,
thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable.
But where did you see that mindset allow you to be resourceful, especially as you said, going to WNBA wasn't going from Nebraska to the NFL and making 7, 8, 9, 10 figures from that standpoint? How did you say, all right, I had this degree, I have sports, but now I have to actually use both to get to where I want to be successful, and knowing the difference that WNBA is going to give you an opportunity to have a lot of eyes, but you're also not going to be able to make a ton of money just playing that profession?
My brother's a doctor, my middle brother.
Yep.
And a lot of it was being able to sit at the dinner table. I remember being a kid. I mean, that's how the can-do mindset was established. My mom first would tell me can-do because I felt like my brothers were just so remarkable and I was following in their shadow. Like, I mean, honestly. And so education has always been at the forefront of us as a family and having the bragging rights. And my oldest brother still doesn't have his degree. But I will say that it meant a lot to me to be able to balance that. I've always prided myself on the court and being versatile, and I wanted to do just that off the court. I looked at WNBA salaries, yes, as all of you all, where it's not life-changing by any means, but I looked at the opportunity to grow in an endorsement standpoint, but also using the WNBA and using my name to be able to sit at tables that I wouldn't have been ordinarily invited to.
Yeah.
And a goal of mine early on was that I think women, especially women in sports, and especially women in sports that go to school for 4 years, that get their degree, are extremely valuable. And I grew up idolizing Magic Johnson. I think what he did for NBA players from a business standpoint is he set the tone.
Yeah.
Look at a Michael Strahan and what he's done and his transition and getting up early when he was still playing and being in broadcasting. And I've kind of taken all of that and kind of made it my own a little bit. I think all of us aspire to be billionaires. I think all of us aspire to be able to have the ability to have generational wealth. And I don't think that I'm going to be limited by what the WNBA can provide. Like, I want to open up more doors and walk through the doors that others have opened up for me. And so, you know, I've taken that and done broadcasting, try to take that from, you know, a cap table standpoint, from a business standpoint, and continue to listen and learn. And so I think that that has been valuable for me, is not being limited by what has happened in the past. Like
I got chills over here because you gave me excitement in what you said about not only transitioning and leveraging the shield of the WNBA, because I look at it the same way. I leverage the shield of the NFL to get me into doors, not only that I'm not supposed to be in, but ultimately that they were closed. But because I was a part of the NFL, I opened them and I can walk through them and I can speak the same language because I finished school, because I've been in these, I've had these mentors and these different people to do that. What are some of those things that you have your hands in that are multiple buckets? Because I'm curious. I want to talk a little bit more about your Angel FC investment. I'm assuming you're also a part of Monarch Collective with Kara and whatnot.
So yeah, I am. So first, I think I started preparing for the end before the end. Like, you know, when you wake up in the morning, which I know you know because you play football. I don't know how y'all do it.
Yeah,
And
I give you guys crap as basketball players all the time. 10 a.m. call time for practice is crazy.
like NFL, I don't like y'all meet to meet. Y'all meet to have a meeting about a meeting for a meeting. And then it's like, oh, we got to do it all over again for special teams. And then we got to do offensive, like position. I don't understand. Y'all, listen.
To me, it can be cut down to 4 hours in a day and be done.
Okay, well, listen, make it better for the...
when I own an NFL team, I will make sure I do that.
All right, well, you better, your second call better be me, because I want to own an NFL team. Listen, the Bears fan in me is like, I know the fans are disappointed that I'm sitting here with the Lion, but it's okay.
Hey, the team is up, ready to go.
It's okay.
They're about to get sold, so
listen,
we can have some conversations.
All right, let's have some conversations. I'm serious. I am involved in broadcasting. I started broadcasting before my career ended.
Yep.
I don't want to coach. I don't have patience. So the next best job, I feel like that keeps me close to basketball and gives you that feeling is broadcasting. Like I sit courtside and I watch Jason Tatum come down and try to go at Bron and hit the game-winning fadeaway on the baseline. Like I sat in a coaches meeting with Ime and was able to pick his brain about different adjustments. Like the basketball fiend in me is crazy. So I'm in love with the process, but I'm also using it as an avenue for a career, visibility, all of those things.
I think you put that eloquently, because I was afraid of being in the media space, and not afraid, more so reluctant, because everybody said you speak well, you do all these different things, you should definitely go into commentating. And I was like, I don't have a desire. Like once I leave the game, I want to be done. But now being a part of Sky Sports, like being live at the games, I'm like, I want to go to more live games. So now, like this actually year, this coming up year, we're talking about doing 7, 8, 9 games in studio, like live on the ground, and like you feel that energy and whatnot. So I hear you 100%.
There's nothing replacing.
Yeah.
There is nothing. And I know it's probably a whole different level when you're talking about playing in front of 60, 70, 80,000 fans. But I know playing in front of 30,000 fans and you're running out and you hear it and you feel it. And there's nothing like playing at a away arena when everybody's against you. Yeah. And you just like use that as fuel.
Going
like
to Raider Stadium.
I loved it. Exactly. And so, I don't know. I think I look for things that give me, you're not going to get the same, but, you know, spark those type of like reactions and feelings. As well as Adidas has been I've been in an Adidas partnership since I was 14 when I was wearing Adidas, before NIL. So I had the T-Max. You couldn't tell me nothing. I had the red T-Max. They were fire. And Adidas has grown with me. I mean, they've grown with me through signature shoes, through me going overseas for 10 months, you know, or 10 years, 7 months out of the year. Mm-hmm. So this partnership, I'm president of Adidas Women's Basketball. Which I'm excited about.
Get on the men's side and give them some support.
I would love to be on the men's side. My goal in all of this is I would love to be on the board. That is like what I would really like to do, to be on the board. But it's the passion. I think that's what drives me. So all the things I'm involved in, whether, you know, it's Angel City, whether it's trying to get a WNBA team, whether it's trying to be involved in NFL, because by the way, like I'm the biggest football fan. Like I know. Okay. So when we walked in, when we saw each other in Houston at the coaches meeting, my producer is the biggest Detroit Lions fan. Okay. His name is Bert Bondi. Okay. So I saw his face before we walked in, and then like we had to try to act natural. And so when I said hi to you, I was looking at Bert like, yo, this is crazy. But anyway, I say all that to say, like, I like being driven by passion. So all the things I'm in, yes, you know, you're making investments to have return on those investments and all that. But I'm involved with Mark Lazary with his sports fund. And part of the agreement between him and I is that there's going to be a huge portion of the fund that is used to, you know, be in women's sports. Yeah. And so I hope at some point to own a WNBA team. I hope to run a WNBA team the way that I would want it to be ran if, you know, I was playing for it.
Oh, that's very interesting. I mean, I think somebody you should also talk to. I don't know if you ever met Melody Hobson. Oh, but you should definitely have a good conversation. I was just at their offices in Chicago. So another Chicago people that you should be connected to. Her and John Rogers are amazing people in that space, and let alone that private equity, venture capital space in general. WNBA team, like, You see a lot of players recently have signed one-year deals anticipating this new CBA. What do you anticipate or predict that to look like? And if you're in an owner's shoes, which you will soon be, we'll speak it into fruition.
Let's do it.
What would you want to see happen for the women's game and especially for the players?
Well, I think monetarily, like it's going to go up tremendously just because it hasn't. I mean, it went up in 2020 and everybody was blown away, but it was really like the potential of a player to make $750,000 was like a big deal. But really, it's only one person in the entire league that could possibly make that. Now, I hope it's real. I hope it's real money. And by real money, I think you have to have one or two players on your team that are making over, $1 million right now, which is crazy to say considering where women's sports is right now. But I think that's what's going to happen. Now, I think we have to be realistic in that the league as a whole is super important. Yeah. Now, the stars drive it. They push it forward. We have to make sure that we're taking care of the 11, the 12, the 13. Mm-hmm. And by that, I hope that the fight is expanded roster spots. Okay. Because as you know in football, right, like you have a certain amount of roster spots. If you cut 7 or 6 of those roster spots, those dudes don't have a chance to develop. Yeah. I give the example all the time of Alex Caruso, who was in the developmental league, actually with Coach Dagnall in the developmental league, playing whatever, developed and had a huge impact on winning the championship with the Lakers and will have a huge impact on probably winning the championship with the Thunder. Yeah. He needed time to develop. He needed an opportunity. He needed people that were involved in that. The NBA has an entire developmental league. Yeah. The WNBA is doing itself a disservice by only keeping 11 players. So I think even before, and I talk about it in my book a lot, even before the expansion of entire teams, as you know, there are only certain people that can carry franchises. Yeah. To add to that, you have to have a deeper roster, which will allow people to develop, will allow people to be able to practice more, will get players in situations where they're not having the ball in their hands, but they're able to play off of other people, which won't happen unless you increase the amount of people on the team.
So how do you picture that happening? Do you want there to be a supplemental league that's underneath the WNBA, or do you want them just to be within the team that are practice squad per se, like the NFL has, where, hey, there's, I think it's like 16 guys. They range from like 100,000 to 50,000, depending on whatever factors the NFL really wants on from that standpoint. And they're a part of, they got to go through the grit and grind of everything. And then they don't play on Sundays. They sit there and watch and learn that experience from afar. But then also from a standpoint of how does that happen? TV deals, merchandise, shoe deals. Like, are you expecting more from the NBA and from the Nike, which is the best shoe brand out there?
Out. 3 stripes, baby. 3 stripes. 3 stripes. To answer your question, I wholeheartedly believe that can be where the WNBA goes. Yeah. I don't know if they're in a position right now to have a developmental league. I think the development happens with those players that may not travel. Yeah. I think it's more so having, and if you are going to do a developmental league, maybe it's a team. Maybe it's a team of 12 and they just work out and they have their training and whatever, and then they can fill in for different spots throughout the league. Maybe it's like a 2-way player in the NBA. But I just think that we have to value growth. And in a world that wants things right now, as a league as a whole, we're not being patient with some of these players that have the potential to contribute, just not right now.
Yeah. And I ask that because when I'm looking at a team, like I almost bought the Portland Thorns, an NWSL team in Portland. And when I looked at it from a P&L perspective, they're losing money. And for me to have to float those dollars and do those different things, where's my return on investment? And yes, you see the amazing thing of, as you said, there's only a few amount of people that can float teams. Like you look at the Joseph Tsai and Clara Tsai with the New York Liberty, and they got this amazing valuation at $40 million or $43 million from the value of that team. But how can you sustain that across the board?
So this is so funny because Mark Lazary is like one of my favorite people. He's a business partner of mine, is running the fund Sports Capital. He always says, do you think that the visibility of women's sports is going to go up or down? I think we both agree it's probably going to go up because 95% of what's shown on television is male sports.
Yep.
It's male dominated, right? So we've seen the numbers of if you put it on TV, if you're able to advertise it and market it, then it can be successful. And so I think that Claire Wu-Tsai, Mark Davis have changed the narrative behind Matt Ishbia, has changed the narrative behind what it takes. Because as you know, scared money doesn't make money.
Yeah.
You can't halfway invest in something. You got to put what you have in it and you know it will grow over time. And I think for so long, WNBA and women's sports was looked at as a charity and not an honest investment. And so now we're getting less of the millionaires and more of the billionaires in those seats that are business savvy and can do all these things. You look at Angel City, you know, it's been remarkable to be a part of that journey and just see where it started. And now it's like an event and they're doing collabs and families love going to games. And it's a great environment to be a part of. And so I think that we're going to see in the next 10 years of women's sports team that is, I won't even say 10 years, I'll say 5 years, that a women's sports team is going to be valued at $1 billion.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And with that structure, just quick example, like you look at the Portland Trail Blazers, they're about to get sale. And you mentioned Matt Ishbia, you mentioned the size, you looked at, they have vertical integration across those teams. Do you believe that vertical integration is key? I personally do think it is, so I don't want to influence your answer, but I think it's I think it's 2026, the WNBA team is supposed to expand to Portland. I think that new team owner needs to look at both of those organizations as one whole.
I agree with you. However, I would like to add this. I think similar to how you're talking about you need business savvy people in these situations, you need passion, but you also need people that have been involved in women's sports. So here's the thing. It's not apples to apples. Like the fan base of the Trailblazers is not going to be the fan base of the new
Portland's
Portland.
a little bit different, but I agree with you. Yeah.
Okay. But like we've seen that because they tried that. And here's the thing. And I, with all due respect, I say this. I think men are great in leadership positions, done a great job. But we need to get some more women in those situations. We tried this in the WNBA where we thought that ex-NBA players were going to be great coaches in the WNBA. I mean, you talk about Muggsy Bogues. Love him. Loved watching him play. Not the greatest coach. Like it, you know, but then you have the Bill Lambiers and the Michael Coopers. Okay, so like it kind of balances out. But at the end of the day, I think that we need more women that have been involved in the sport, that have been involved in the grind and the sweat and the blood and the tears and all those things, because there are going to be some owners that think that they just roll it out and basketball is basketball. But no, it's a different fan base that you're going to have to apply to. It's more of a family. It's more of the environment. It's less one-on-one and more sharing the ball. It is. There are a lot of things that are great. And so, yes, I think that we have grown on the strength of the NBA, 100%. But I would like us to kind of maybe separate a little bit because I think being held under one of the greatest, if not the greatest league that has ever existed other than the NFL, like you want your own flowers separately. We can't continue this comparison because it's one, not fair. I mean, the WNBA is almost 30 years young. Like we've only had that many years to grow. I was a Bears fan because my dad was a Bears fan and my grandpa was like, that's how Celtics fans, they have Celtics fans out in LA, crazy. But because their family moved here, like we haven't had time to have that generational support and all of that. And so I think within women's sports, what I would like to call out is like, we need more people that have been in the fight, being involved in the process. So when I kind of started writing this book, it's called The Can-Do Mindset. And I really wanted to have a perspective, a different perspective. I didn't want this to just be a basketball book. And so growing up, my nickname was Can, short for Candace. And as I am 8 and 11 years younger than my brothers, I started feeling like everything they did, I tried to measure myself up against them. And they were so much older and better and greater and smarter and all these things. And so my mom would just tell me, like whisper to me, like, can do. So that became my nickname. Whenever I like doubted myself, tying my shoes, trying to run, score free throws, whatever it was. And it started becoming like, I would tell myself can do. And so it soon became an acronym for community, authenticity, navigating negativity, loving the dash, which is the journey, and seizing and creating opportunities. And so in the can-do mindset, I tell stories throughout my career, throughout my life, through the lens of those, key messages is who I am and, what I've become.
Man, that's amazing. I mean, can-do is something that is a lot of people in this world need. Not just athletes, not just women, not just men, just everybody in the world need to have that mindset because everybody is
it's the most
so
important
doubtful.
thing. Yeah, mindset is the most important thing. But my brothers did extend it to can do anything and get away with it because I was the baby girl. So
that is fair. Yeah. No, I was definitely I was a second child. So
so you're the middle child.
I got to be underneath my sister who was the biological sciences and kinesiology degree. So I had to always look at it. Wow. Went to school with a degree in soccer and all that stuff. So like, it's one of those things like, I can do too as well. Yep. So don't worry about it. I'm right on your heels. If you're talking to a younger self, what are some of the tools and things that you did that you would want to tell yourself that, hey, this is something I want to continue to do, but ultimately, how could I have taken it to another level? And especially like, what you know now?
We're always afraid of no's in business. And I think that within our craft, like I believe in the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. Like I'm not ever going to forget the amount of energy and effort and how deliberate I was with my craft, with basketball. Yep. I will never forget that. And the amount of times where I stayed after in the gym and I asked questions and I looked at footwork. I remember rewinding Hakeem Olajuwon's Dream Shake and looking at MJ and looking at Cynthia Cooper's pull-up jump shot. Like I vividly remember all the hours and energy and obsession that I had for basketball. And we think that it's going to come easier at the next phase of life, and it's not. I think you have to be prepared to hear the no's. We've all heard the no's from coaches, like, don't do it that way. Yep. And then you're genius when all of a sudden now it's working. So it's fighting through those no's. It's also not forgetting what got you there. And I think it's falling in love with the process. Like I've always been about, I can't do one thing. I have to do multiple things. That's just the way my brain, I can't do a simple layup every single time down the court. I can't just have a move and a counter move. That's not the way I work.
Yeah.
And I always have to have my hands in multiple buckets, and it hasn't changed. So I think it's staying true to that, but also remembering what got you to that point.
Amazing. Thank you, Candace. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and look forward to talking again soon.
Appreciate you.
All right. Man, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with Miss Candace Parker. I think my biggest takeaway I took from her was just a can-do mentality. I think everybody in life can learn from that mantra, and especially somebody who's in the transition of their career out of sports into the real world. But a key piece of it was, I didn't start before it ended. Let me know who you want to hear from next. I'm excited to talk to that person, and I will go find it for you. Like, comment, and subscribe to No Free Lunch on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. No Free Lunch is presented by T. Rowe Price. T. Rowe Price proudly sponsors No Free Lunch. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of T. Rowe Price. Our sponsorship supports the platform and does not imply endorsements of specific content or perspectives.